Welcome to Talking with Tech. I'm your host, Rachel Madel, joined as always by Chris Bouguet. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Rachel. All right, let me ask you something. You do quite a bit of traveling, yeah?
Correct. I do a lot of traveling.
It's subjective, but I would say, you're frequently on a plane and you have to carry your suitcase with you, right?
Truth. I'm a super minimalist packer too, Chris. I'm a carry-on girly.
You and I are aligned in that way. It's like if I don't have to I get angry at myself if I brought too much. I never use this thing. It's like, oh, why did I bring it?
Chris, you were like the most minimalist packer I've ever met. I'm like, how are you carrying a backpack for 3 days? Like, this is insanity.
So something that I want to talk about a little bit here in relation to AAC, and that is when I was packing, my wife and I were packing to go to this trip to England. I realized that my Talking with Tech luggage tag that you had made for me ages ago got ripped off somewhere along the line and has disappeared. That is sort of a thing with me. Like those always seem to get ripped off and disappear. And I made one this year for that trip where, I actually made one with for my daughter over the summer. She did a Europe trip and made a luggage tag. And then I was like, oh, I'll make a similar one for Melissa and I for our luggage here. And so I used 3D printing software it's called Tinkercad. It's free. Anyone can make it. And I created a luggage tag that is 3D printed, and then I 3D printed it and hung it on my bag. Now, here's the thing. This is what I want to think about is as I was hanging it on that bag, I was like, anyone can see my name and anyone can see my email and I have my address on here. Is that cool? Like if this was 1979 and I was getting on a plane as a kid going to my grandma's by myself, we would have a tag on there and no one would think twice about it. But it's 2024 and I'm thinking, do I want people who I don't know, either like I'm sitting there at the airport and my tag's just out, or now my bag goes off to who knows where and who's going to see it and they're going to see that information. Do I want them to have that information? Do I want them to know that I'm traveling, right? For instance, which maybe I'm overcautious and people listening are like, Chris, like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Then I thought, okay, is there a thing I should have done? Should I have made it that it like closes or something that has a lid? So yes, it has something that you could open if you wanted to, but then it would be more effort than just sort of seeing it, right? So let me just stop there because I am getting to a point with AAC, but let me stop there. As a travel person, how do you typically do it? And do you worry about stuff like that?
It's interesting because as you were talking about this, I was like, yeah, like this resonates with me, not necessarily with the travel, but just the fact that like I'm so public facing that like the moment someone knows my last name, like it just opens up a world of vulnerability, because I'm like one Google search away from you understanding so much about my life, in ways that does feel a little alarming at times and a little scary. And I have had some situations where I'm like, yikes, like this person like found my name and then my last name. And then like I've had some like really like sketch situations. So I have thought about this. I haven't thought about it specific to like the luggage tag, but it is definitely worrisome to me, like at times. Like it's funny because I feel like my friends all joke like I'm so public facing, and like some of my friends are like more into like privacy and like, oh, like I don't want to share a video on Marco Polo because it's like it's not safe. And I'm like, wow, like I'm like so the opposite of that spectrum. I'm just like, here's my face, here's my first and last name, like you know everything about me now if you do a quick Google search. So it's interesting, but I haven't thought about it necessarily through the lens of traveling, but like it is actually like something that's been on my mind. And when you brought it up, I was like, yeah, like it's like it kind of gives me this little pit in my stomach sometimes, like, yikes, maybe I'm too public facing.
too out there, right? Here's the thing. You have the choice, right? You have the choice if you want to do those Marco Polos or not, right? If you hit the send message on your, on the email or the text, or if you want to have your luggage tag have something that covers it or not, like you have these choices. Something that occurred to me around AAC, this is the point that I was building to, is that, so you know that part of my job currently is that I will receive broken iPads and I help facilitate getting them fixed. And sometimes when they come in, someone has written the name of the student on the case or the device. Usually it's not. In the world of education, we call it PII, personal identifying information. Maybe that's larger spectrum too. Like, I don't know, I'm not into cybersecurity, but like maybe that's the term. I don't know. But PII, right? And a first name is not necessarily too much PII, but I can see how some people, and I had definitely seen this out in the world, not necessarily my school district, but out in the world, where someone has put their index card into the back of the case or something. And so, like, if this is lost, this is this person's, right? Or some other, like, in the effort of safety, like if you were found with this device, see, you don't have to push any buttons. You don't have to unlock it. You can just see that maybe this kid that this device, they have this information. People can't see. I'm holding up a device, a fictional, an air device, like I'm playing air guitar. I'm holding up an air device and I'm pointing to it like, see, here on my device, I have my PII. So if I'm lost and a policeman finds me or a police person finds me, they can help me, or someone else can help me. But that also exposes me to the risk of something nefarious happening, right? And how do you sort of mitigate that risk? And my thought is, I guess if I had to lean on what's least dangerous, don't put people's names on devices. Generally, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question, because also, like, I'm thinking now, I'm like, you've got my little wheels turning, and I'm thinking so often we recommend having super easy access to an AAC system, meaning like there's not a password to get in. We like remove all of the barriers of entry for students, but there is a lot of personal information that we program in. Like, my name is so-and-so, I live at, like, it really does have a lot of personal information. And so this is like one of the first times I'm like thinking like, wow, like if that device gets into the wrong hands, potentially, that could be not great, but also like this is communication that our students need to learn how to use, and we want to program those things in. So I don't know, like this is a really good thought experiment for me.
Well, I do wonder about some, again, 3D printing is an option here. I could see some sort of sticker. I mean, it could be a low tech too, where there's some sort of, like I said, slider door or Velcro thing that covers that so that it's not just out there in the world. Think about this. You and I have been to a conference, together or separately. Many people will know this experience where you get the name tag and you slap it on there. It's like, my name's Rachel Madel, my name's Chris Bouguet, right? And then after that thing and you go out afterwards to some sort of establishment, you forgot it's there. People point out, oh, hey, you're Rachel, huh? Yeah, wait, how did you know that? Yeah, it's got your thing. It's a joke, whatever. Or if it's more friendly, they'll be like, Rachel, your tag's still on. Everyone knows who you are. You can take it off. Like, someone will alert you to the fact that you have your name on. So it makes sense to me that you would have some mitigating factor to cover the name if you're going to put it on a device, so that like on the outside of the device. And then inside the device, it does sort of make sense that part of the operational skills that we would be teaching, plugging it in, charging it, how bright do we want the screen to be, those sorts of, how loud do we want it to be, how are we protecting your PII, right? Where are you putting this? Is it on a page in a place that is, 9 hits deep to get to that? But is that counterintuitive? Because when I need that information, I need it quickly. Is it a hit a button, wait, I'm going to get you my information, and then you go 9 hits deep? Are those the strategies? But I do think in 2024, these are the things we really need to be wrestling with as educators, to protect kids' privacy and help families through thinking through these things to protect the safety of their whole family.
Mm-hmm. This also kind of brings up another privacy thought that I've heard before, which is the features of some of the AAC systems tracking what's been communicated. And like I've definitely heard kind of different schools of thought with that from a privacy standpoint, meaning like, someone can't go and read all the backlog communications that I've had, for the last 3 days. And so like, how are we thinking through that lens when we're thinking about AAC users? And especially, as AAC users get older and, become more proficient with their AAC, like tracking and logging all of their communication, there does feel like there's some privacy concerns there. And so it's interesting to think about. And again, another lens to start thinking through as we're working with students, as we're talking to families about this. Like, these are the types of conversations that I think that we could be having earlier with families and students, and thinking through this lens and kind of helping our students who use AAC make those types of decisions, or at least understand kind of the pros and cons and the things to think about. Feels like some really great teaching opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. Well, okay, I just wanted to bring that up as a awareness level thing, is to be cautious of the PII that is readily available, and what can you do from a security lens to make it a little bit harder. In our school district, there's this security guy that I occasionally interface with, and he calls them the bad guys. Like, what can we do? There's bad people out there. There are people that might be doing nefarious things. Let's make it harder for them to do those nefarious things. So, putting some, at least thinking through the protections of people is at least the minimum we can do. Yeah.
Totally. No, I completely agree. It's such a good point. And yeah, I've thought about some of the things, but not all the things. So definitely was like happy you brought this up. And I'm hoping our listeners are like, like maybe I should think through that lens now. It's like the coolest thing about what we do is just like, there's so many different layers of this onion that we can peel back and think through. And yeah, this is one of them that I haven't necessarily thought of directly, but it feels like it makes a lot of sense to start thinking through that lens.
Yeah. I'll give you one more before we get to the interview. I was in a recent conversation about student passwords, and occasionally not occasionally, very frequently, I'm working with people who, and supporting educators or supporting kids that might have fine motor, are learning to control their fine motor if possible, right? So they might be using, we like to use strong passwords, right? Like multiple digits with different characters and all sorts of stuff, right? You have strong passwords, and two-factor is the thing that people will probably be aware of. So kids, we want to have strong passwords. Well, what can we do from a fine motor standpoint if you have trouble typing in a strong password, right? What can we do to still keep you secure, but also make it so that it's not like so cumbersome to get in there, right? And so, again, this is the security guy and I were chatting through, like, okay, let's go through it from what's most secure to least secure, and we talk through that. And then, okay, so when you and your team are having conversations and helping people through this, let's start with the most secure thing, and then, okay, if that can't happen, then here's the next most secure thing. Can that happen? And how can we make that happen? So for instance, the most secure thing would be keep the strong password. What can we do? Can we angle the keyboard in a way? Can we make the letters bigger? Can not the keys themselves, but the letters on the keys bigger, because that would screw up the motor plan if we made the keys bigger, but make the letters bigger. Do we need a device that has a backlight under the keys? Maybe that will help. Like, there's those sorts of questions that will start with trying to be the most secure thing. And then if it's like, no, we have to go to maybe a shorter password or something, well, what are the security parameters around that? Which I don't want to necessarily put out on the podcast. I just want people to think through, what are those security measures to help protect kids?
No, that makes a lot of sense. I have a student right now who's learning a password and really struggling with the capitals. So like having a hard time hitting the shift and the letter at the same time. And so that's like another thing to think about.
Sticky keys. I literally had that conversation this morning with someone who was like, yeah, they need to hold, they can't do capital letters because they have to hold two things down at once. And I was like, there's an accessibility feature called sticky keys. It's on all the devices. So sticky keys.
Amazing. I didn't know about sticky keys. Look at me learning something new every day on this podcast. I will circle back to sticky keys with this client. That's such a great idea.
If you enjoy Talking with Tech, we could use your help in spreading the word about the podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes. The more positive reviews the podcast gets, the easier it becomes for others to find it. The more people who find the podcast, the more the word spreads about how to effectively consider and implement AAC. And who doesn't want that? If that sounds good to you, please take a moment and give the podcast a quick review. We'd so very much appreciate it. Now, let's get back into the episode. Welcome to Talking with Tech. My name's Chris Bouguet, and I'm here with three awesome individuals that I got to meet in person at the Communication Matters Conference of 2024. I'm going to invite each one of you to take a second and tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do. Who wants to go first?
Helen, do you want to go first?
Hi, I am Helen Hewson. I was born with cerebral palsy, and this has always affected my ability to speak normally. I have been using various forms of augmentative and alternative communication since I was age 3. There have been many amazing developments and advances in technology during my lifetime, from the very early wooden symbol boards, right up to the very latest technology that I haven't used for my communication today. As a teenager, I sometimes felt very isolated in social situations because my speech was very difficult to understand for people who didn't know me very well. My lack of normal understandable speech would often make people presume that my disability affected my intelligence. As a teenager, this began to affect my confidence in group situations. My school catered for children with many different disabilities and learning difficulties, and although I was placed in a high ability class, all the others could talk normally and use their hands to write with and answer questions quickly, whilst I was sat on the other side of the classroom using my computer. My parents felt that my full learning potential wasn't being realized at all at school, and my access to things like physio and speech therapy were very hit and miss. I was also very isolated outside school and did nothing socially. It was for all these reasons that my parents and I started looking into the possibility of me going away to a boarding school run by the Spastics Society, who are now called SCO and specifically catered for children with cerebral palsy. My parents and speech therapist felt that some sort of portable communication aid with technology would be very beneficial for me. The assessment process for this was very slow, and there wasn't that much augmentative communication technology around at the time. It took 2 years to identify and obtain an appropriate communication aid for me. The model we identified was called a touch talker and was manufactured by a company called Liberator, who are now a very big company and now manufacture several different communication aids for all abilities and ages. I was very excited when I got this first communication aid. It meant that for the first time ever, I could be understood by anyone and everyone. This meant that at school they could slowly start teaching me to go out shopping alone and communicate with the outside world. I also learned to travel alone by train home to my parents using my aid. I longed for a portable system of word prediction. In 1996, I heard about a company called Cambridge Adaptive who had produced a portable system with word prediction. However, it was yet another long, hard fight of nearly a year to finally obtain funding for my Chameleon 2 aid in February 2000. It was early in 2008 when I first heard about the organization One Voice through my local speech therapist. They were looking for adult role models with communication aids who could go to these events and give support, encouragement, and advice to children and younger people and their families who are just starting out on their communication journey. I went to my first national event in 2008 and really enjoyed working with the children and their families. I am now a regular role model. I enjoy meeting and sharing my experiences with the young people and their families. I have now given a variety of presentations at these weekends, and this has also helped my own confidence to develop through using my aid to do this. In 2013, I became a trustee of One Voice. This was an exciting new challenge for me, taking part in our online meetings and learning about how much is involved with the management of One Voice, and have continued to be involved with them until 2021.
How do you follow that?
I know, I was just going to say, you follow that, Saf.
Shall I go next?
Yeah,
So
you follow
my
that.
name's Saffron Murphy-Mann, and I am a specialist AAC teacher. My background is music. My degree was music, and I fell into AAC quite late in life. I would say I'm still a beginner, really. I work in mainstream and specialist settings, facilitating young AAC users to get what they need to show what they know, basically. I think it's really important that young AAC users are given that chance to be in a setting that suits them the best, whether it be mainstream or a specialized setting. And my aim is for my students to walk in with their, or go into a classroom with their device and be able to independently access their lesson and all of their learning, and have a means to access their learning, to see the questions, and to have a means to answer that question and record it all on one page. So that's what I do. I've been a trustee of CM for 6 years. I'm just going into my 3rd term as a trustee. And I lead the working group on conference.
We're going to get into that in a second.
Yeah.
Andrea?
Okay, my turn. So my background is speech and language therapy. So I'm a speech and language therapist. I've worked for too many years to think about as a speech and language therapist. And during that time, I've worked across the UK for the health service, for education services. I worked for many years for a charity. And now I am in independent practice. I'm the director of an independent speech and language therapy company called AT Therapy. And at AT Therapy, we have speech and language therapists, we have assistants, we have an assistive technology support and therapy service. And we also have a service called AT Mentors. And our AT Mentors are people who use AAC with lived experience of using AAC, and we employ those people to give experience and confidence and motivation to others who may be just starting on their AAC journey, or maybe less confident in their AAC journey, whatever that is. I do feel that lived experience is something that is so valuable to people who are at a different stage of their AAC journey, to the people using AAC themselves, but also to families, also to support workers, to education establishments. And we are trying to, put lots of content out on our social media and really provide various different ways of providing that mentoring support, face-to-face or video support or video exchange or whatever that may be. But that's probably one of the things that I'm sort of most proud of in the company, really, is employing AAC users as part of that therapeutic team. I've been a trustee at Communication Matters for about 5 years, so I'm about a year behind that. So that's me, really.
Awesome. All right. So you mentioned communication matters. When you hear people say CM, that's what we mean. We're talking about communication matters. You're all involved in communication matters, and that's where I met you. Is the conference put on by that organization? So let's start there. What is communication matters?
I think Helen has something to say on this.
We are a much bigger charity who represent all members of the AAC community, speech and language therapists, AAC manufacturers and researchers, and of course AAC users themselves. We run a conference every September, where we have a big exhibition of all the latest communication aids and AAC technology available on the market. We are also the UK chapter of ISAC, who are an international charity for AAC.
How'd you each get involved?
Shall I go first, Saf?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So as a speech and language therapist working in the UK and specialising in AAC, Communication Matters is the go-to conference every year. It's something that's kind of cemented into your calendar, that it happens at the start of September. So it's the start of an academic year in the UK. And it's just a really good time to go to conference, to meet like-minded professionals, families, AAC users, anybody who is part of the AAC community, really. And there were so many people that I met and so many great seminars, workshops, social events that I went to, that it was something that I would fight every year to get funding to go to CM as part of my role. And every year there's a call for trustees for new members, because as you're a trustee, you work in blocks of time. And so there are always people who are stepping down and new people who are stepping up onto the board. So it came to the point where I thought, I've ignored this call for trustees for long enough, really. I've got so much from CM, I should kind of give something a little bit back to it, really. So I offered to stand as a trustee and got appointed to the board. So yeah, that's how I got involved, really. It's been a really integral part of my career, really, is going to Communication Matters conference.
Awesome. And Saffron?
So as I said, I came to AAC quite late as a teacher, and through work, I was hearing people going, oh, well, at CM and at CM. And I was like, what is CM? And I think I'd been in AAC about 3 or 4 years when I first came to conference, and it blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. It was like, oh my God, there's so much more. I think as a teacher working in schools, you are quite isolated, and especially I was working in mainstream schools. So I didn't know any other AAC users. I didn't know any other AAC professionals. And then to suddenly walk into this room where there were 300 other people who all were AAC users or family members or worked in CM. And it was like, oh, I need to get in more involved in this. So yeah, I stepped up to be a trustee.
Awesome. And Helen?
I attended my first Communication Matters conference in 2013, and I immediately loved the inclusive buzz and atmosphere of the conference. I almost immediately felt that this was a place where my communication and disability would be understood and accepted by everyone. The conference has become a highlight of my year ever since, because it just feels so welcoming and inclusive to everyone. I started applying to present papers at the conference about my own AAC journey and about my work at Birmingham City University with the speech and language therapy students, helping the students to learn more about the world of AAC. My husband Toby is a previous chair and trustee of Communication Matters. In 2021, I decided that I needed a change from one voice, so I decided to apply to become a trustee of the charity Communication Matters.
Sounds like you all came from it at different angles, but all are having a great experience, right? Is that what keeps you coming back and staying involved? Because you've all been part of it for a couple of years now, right?
I think what keeps me coming back and being involved in communication matters is a desire to improve the situation and quality of life for people like me living with communication disabilities. I think one of the things that keeps me motivated to stay involved is a wanting and deep passion to increase the awareness of AAC and prove to the world that my lack of speech does not mean that I and many other people have a lack of intelligence.
You go next.
Okay. Well, what keeps me coming back really is and helping out as a trustee. It's multi-layered, and there's many reasons why I keep coming back really. The group of trustees that we work with, you met us all when you came over to the UK, Chris. It's a really great bunch of people to work with. You know, it's a really great atmosphere at the meetings. We really get stuff done as well as sort of have fun, and it's just like coming back and meeting up with friends for a couple of days. So I really love when we get together and do the in-person trustee meetings. So yeah, that keeps me coming back because it's really good fun to be involved. But there's nothing really like the conference for AAC users, as Helen just said, really. You know, there's so many AAC users that come to conference, and one thing that the three of us have in common is we're all involved with the CM AAC User Focus Group. So that's something that we've put into place since we've been trustees, and Helen now chairs that group. And what we do at that group is take everything from the trustee meeting, any decisions, any thoughts, to the focus group, and we run those past the AAC User Focus Group and feed that back into the trustees meeting. And that to me is a really rewarding process. We also do that the other way around. So we've just had our feedback meeting from our September conference, and we've got loads of information to take to our next trustee meeting about from AAC users themselves, what worked, what didn't work, what could be improved, new ideas. So it's that dynamic conversation between the trustees and AAC users, and keeping that really alive and really fresh that keeps me coming back. But one thing that really keeps me coming back is one particular family whose son uses AAC, and I've supported him for a very long time, too long to think about. He's just coming to the end of his secondary school age. He'll be about 16 now. And she says that communication matters changed her life and changed her son's life. And it's things like that really that make me realise you can take it for granted as a professional when you've been coming for such a long time. And then you see people who are new to conference and you know who are experiencing conference for the first time. And it really does make you see that actually communication matters is still kind of changing people's lives and helping AAC users come together, and hearing the enthusiasm from the AAC User Focus Group. They're desperate, for example, to get dates nailed down as soon as possible. One comment from the last AAC User Focus Group was, "This is our Christmas, like when is we need to get Christmas in the diary." So yeah, it really is a highlight of a lot of people's years.
Awesome. And Saffron?
Yeah, I mean, very much like Andrea, I think the work with the AAC User Focus Group is fantastic. And I mean, a lot of my trusteeship, as it were, has been during COVID. And we carried on because our meetings are remote, so they're all online. And we went all the way through COVID. And every meeting, it was like, we can't wait to get back and see each other in person. We're just so, it was so isolating for so many of our AAC user members. And so the conference is just that opportunity, and it's a brilliant opportunity. I mean, on our first evening of conference, it's a chance for our AAC users to entertain. So we have a talent show, an open mic night, and it's not specifically for AAC users, but it seems like it has become a showcase for their talent. And there is some amazing talent out there. From Helen has danced twice, 2 years you've danced, haven't you, Helen? We've had a young man last year who got up and told jokes. We've had people doing poetry. We've had all sorts of things. And I mean, last year was the first year we'd run it. And one of the very large, very burly suppliers was standing in the audience in tears. And he went, "This is why I do my job. This is what my job is about, is enabling these people." And it's just so nice to bring everyone together. And so those suppliers can see the effect that they're having on people's lives by giving them the opportunity to have a voice and things. It is amazing. It's an amazing melting pot of different people.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's called a conference. And when you say conference, I think people, they associate that with their background knowledge. And for me, that has been going to the ATIA, Assistive Technology Industry Association Conference, or here in the States, we have the American Speech and Hearing Association Conference. And yes, it's a conference in that there's a website that you go and you register. And yes, there's an itinerary that you follow that has breakout sessions, and you decide which sessions you want to go to. All of that is true. But then there's also these events that happen, at registration. We'll get into that for a second. But then in the evenings, like with fancy dress, and we're going to have to explain what that is to people. So it's much more than this conference of just going to sit in a session and listen to people talk, or have a brief discussion for an hour and then move out of there and go to another one. It feels like a community coming together. And yes, and it's a conference, but it's much more than all of that, right? Okay, so let's go through it then, because like I said, this experience, it was different than what I was sort of envisioning. You said this family of people coming together and this community coming together. Let's walk through it. Saffron, you took us there a little bit with the foreshadowing of the open mic night. But even before that, when you came in to register, there was an event right there to start with. I'll foreshadow it a little bit, or describe it just a little bit, where you were placing chips in different buckets. So I want to hear about that. And then the part that I haven't heard about, and Andrea, you mentioned this a little bit, is you've gotten feedback afterwards. So anything you sort of hint is, well, here's what it was, and here's what people did, and here's what people loved about it, and things we might do a little bit different. I think people would love to hear all of that, because one of the reasons we're recording this is to think, maybe we should be going to this in 2025, or if you're listening to this past 2025, maybe I should go to the 2026 one, or whatever one. Whenever you hear this, you think maybe I should be going to the next one. So let's run people through it. What was the day-to-day experience, event by event? Walk us through what CM 2024 was like.
On Sunday afternoon, when people began to arrive at the conference, Beth Bolin and I set up an activity which was a continuation of the Our Futures presentation that we had presented together at CM 2023. This was about what AAC wanted for their futures. We were both very aware of the fact that often when AAC users leave full-time education, our lives can come to a juddering halt. It can be very difficult to find employment or enough to fill our lives with that can give us a meaningful purpose to our lives. We had asked people to answer 3 questions in the session. These were question 1, what education and training might help you in the short term? By short term, we mean in the next couple of years. Question 2, what other types of training might be helpful for the future? This could be anything related to being an AAC user that would help you in your everyday life or having a career. Question 3, if communication matters can get funding, how would you like any education and training delivered? On Monday night, we did a very brief and first analysis of the answers and feedback that people had given us on Monday. I will now share some of the findings and feedback we found. We found that there were a number of themes that came through within each question. In relation to question 1, people firstly said that they would like training in the fundamental skills and education, such as English and maths. People said that they would like help with exam access. Some of the younger people said that they would like more help with using their tech in school. Another area that came up was that people would like help with learning and building their life skills, such as going shopping, learning how to cook, or learning how to direct people to cook for them if they are physically unable to do it themselves. Other people were interested in developing skills for the workplace and gaining employment, and the steps that it would take to achieve this. In question 2, we asked people what training would help them in the future to achieve their long-term goals. People said that they would like to develop skills in leadership and managing a team of personal support assistants and learning how to manage professional relationships within their homes, which are effectively a workplace for their assistants. People said that they wanted to have much more training and support with learning how to use their AAC devices to enable them to use their devices to maximize their communication potential. Some people wanted support with managing romantic relationships and relationship counseling. Our final finding was that people wanted support, personal development, and mental health support. In question 3, we asked people how they would like any future training to be delivered in order of preference. We gave them the options of face-to-face courses, day courses, or residential courses, or a mixture of face-to-face and online. The majority of people were keen to do any future training in a face-to-face situation, rather than sitting at a computer online. A lot of people said that they would like the training to be delivered in the form of a residential course. I think this is because AAC users generally get less opportunities to mix and socialize with other people, and getting together with other AAC users can help them feel less isolated. Last November, we had a trustees meeting where Beth Wolin and I reported back to the other trustees of communication matters on the findings of the Our Futures project. We had a discussion about what opportunities we knew of that were already available, that we could signpost people towards. These were things and opportunities such as the Communication Access Project, and the mentoring via creativity in practice, role model opportunities via One Voice, and how individuals might access. This also included looking courses in local colleges that people could look into and access as a result of our workshop. It was decided that the focus for the CM 2024 conference would be empowerment. Obviously, it would be impossible to focus on all the areas highlighted by the Our Futures workshop, but these were prioritized in line with CM objectives. We also decided that a new subgroup would be set up called Communities to focus on taking forward plans to develop support for various groups within the associate membership, including AAC users, their families, and local services. The first action agreed was to survey the whole associate membership with sections in the survey for different community groups, including AAC users, about what they want from CM for the future. The survey has now been fully confirmed and was launched during the conference in September.
That survey has now been launched as part of the AAC Awareness Month in October, and it's available on the CM website, and we're looking for everyone. It's not just AAC users, it's not professionals, it's suppliers, professionals, parents, PAs, anyone to get their views on how CM can respond to their needs for the future.
So yeah, we always do have something to draw people into conference on a Sunday, and I felt that activity that we had this year, Helen, was one of the most useful activities that we've had for a long time. It really helped us work from the AAC users' perspective as to the direction that Communication Matters as an organisation should travel moving forward. We always have something happening on the Sunday afternoon. This year, Chris, when you came, it was something that seemed, very sensible, very interactive, very chatty. If I tell you that the year before was egg throwing, then you can see that it's not always something that is so useful. Just sometimes it's just something fun that people can do when they register. Yeah. I won't go into the egg throwing, Saf. You can explain about that if you want to in the future. But then we do have meetings that happen during the Sunday, membership meetings, where Helen, who's the chair, will fill people in on, where Communication Matters is up to as an organisation, do the formal bit of being a charity. But then on the Sunday evening, as Saf said before, we've had various things. We used to have a quiz, and the last couple of years we've had an open mic night. And that's been such good fun in the bar. We've left the more spicy end of the comedians to the end of the night so that younger people can get the warning and leave before the spicy content starts. But that's been a
9
really
o'clock's cut off.
Yeah. So in the UK we call that the watershed. I don't know what you guys call it, but we call it after the watershed. So I don't really know why it's called after the watershed, but that's what it is. And then on Monday the conference starts properly. As you said, there is a proper conference that goes alongside all of these sort of social fun elements, community elements. So we had a keynote speaker. This year was Professor Anna Waller, who was the keynote speaker. And then it's breakout sessions for the rest of the day. They may be workshops, quite interactive. They may be presentations. They might be lightning presentations, very quick, lots of presentations in one session. But there's lots of different formats and lots of different content. And we have different strands, research strand, lived experience strand, clinical practice strand. We have lots of different strands that go through the conference. And then on the Monday night, we do have a dinner. Next year's dinner is going to also incorporate the AAC Awards. And that dinner is called a formal dinner, but as you pointed out, it's fancy dress. You said we might need to explain that, Chris. Is that a term that is not translatable to America? What else would you call it? You dress up as something. So, like in Halloween, you might wear a costume. So there's a theme and you wear a costume for the theme. So this year's conference theme was empowerment. So empowerment was the theme for the dressing up costumes. So there were people there as superheroes. There were people there as suffragettes. There were people there as literally energy. So there's, you can interpret that theme and get dressed up as you like. So yeah, and there's a prize for the best fancy dress, the best costume. And that's Monday night, and the event is hosted by Jamie Priest, who's an AAC user in the UK. So he does a lot of acting and comedy. So he kind of does a bit of a show around leading the dinner from introductory to all the courses, and he'll kind of provide some entertainment as it goes through. We have a singer who provides some amazing background music as the dinner is going on. That's Saf's amazing daughter. We had Saf's granddad playing piano before the dinner, which was amazing as well. And then we have an AAC user, DJ Ollie, who provides the disco following the dinner. So again, that's another nice community activity, leading us into a plenary on the Tuesday. Neurodiversity was one of our themes this year. So we had someone who focused on neurodiversity for the plenary. And then again, breakout sessions, more learning opportunities throughout the day. And as Helen spoke about when she was talking about CM, there is an exhibition that runs throughout. So if you, over the break times or lunch times or throughout conference, you can visit the exhibition. There's also meetings that happen. So there's the AAC User Focus Group host a coffee session for AAC users. There's sessions for families, sessions for various people who work in the NHS services, that kind of thing. So there's opportunities for people to network with people with similar backgrounds throughout conference. So yeah, that kind of takes us through a very exhausting 3 days. We're all ready to rest by the end of those 3 days.
I know, just to comment on those for a second, how much fun the the dinner was, where I got to meet DJ Ollie, and I wish I had. I was warned about fancy dress and coming as a costume, like, hey, prepare for this. But coming from across the pond, we only had so much room in our bags. But I was kicking myself because my wife and I love to dress up in costumes, and it was so fun to see all the people embrace that, right? Like you said, the suffragettes, I think they won like largest group, and someone had painted themselves in green paint for She-Hulk. Which was fun to see, and I think that's the person that won. They're really committed to it, but just to mull around and see everybody embrace that notion of empowerment, and then, like you said, that's just some aspects of it. The meetings that go on, the exhibition hall, I have to say, was also really different in that it wasn't so large. There have been some conferences where I go to it, it's so large you feel like, well, I'm going to miss things. Here, I felt like I could go around and talk to the different representatives and learn from them. There was food on the sides that you could, tea and cookies and water and everything. So all of that was really good. What kind of feedback did you get about 2024? And is there, that so far that you can share?
So in terms of feedback, we get feedback. We hold meetings after the conference with all our main groups. So we've, as Andrea said, we've had feedback from our AAC user group. Last week we had a meeting. They loved it. It was, it's that comment comes up again and again. It's our Christmas. It is their go-to event of the year. So the majority of it is positive. We do listen to it all. It's not all positive. We try and change it. We try and build on what's happened this year and make it bigger and better. So, and then we would have the suppliers would feedback on how they found it. This year we tried something quite different and having some breakout rooms for suppliers so that people could make an appointment. As you say, the exhibition space is quite small. So for us, it's that constant trying to balance having a wide variety of suppliers, but then not having it so that we're looking at health and safety issues and things like that. So we'd looked at some extra rooms for suppliers to be able to take people in and have private discussions or have more in-depth discussions, which then kept the flow going around the exhibition hall. You didn't have someone sitting on a stand having quite a lengthy conversation. That worked. We felt it worked really well. Most of the suppliers did. So yeah, in general, the feedback has been, we can't wait to come back next year. It is that next year. What's happening next year? We've got people asking if they can pre-register for next year and things like that. So we're less than a month after conference and people are already looking forward 11 months. So it's really good.
Yeah, and we were at capacity. We're a sold out conference. We have people who wanted to come who weren't able to come. So that pre-registering is a really good idea, I think, for conference. And we are sort of looking to try and get things, try and do what we can without sort of giving too much away. We're looking at trying to make conference sort of bigger and better as we move forward to reflect that need for building capacity into conference, because we are very lucky really to be very oversubscribed.
And as a charity, we know that our AAC users are an important part of our conference, and we provide subsidised places for our AAC users. So we're constantly looking for funding to go into the pot of money so that we can provide more subsidised places for our AAC users. And obviously that's on a first come, first served basis. So our AAC users are always very keen to know when registration opens. So in the UK, the tax year is from April to April, and we try to open registration before the end of the tax year. So if anyone has an extra little bit of money, then they can put it for their conference place next year. So it's all based about that financing and how do you finance a trip to a conference.
Awesome that you planned it out that way to go for April to April. That's actually the same in the States. April is our tax month as well. Let me ask you about this. So years ago, when Twitter first sort of hit the world, a bunch of us took it and used it as a platform to have sort of a back channel to conferences we went to, like I said, ATIA. And something that we would always struggle with would be, what's the hashtag this year? Is it ATIA 2004 or is it 2000 or is it '04 or is it, there's always and then those are only the people that sort of knew about Twitter, which is now X. And then Instagram sort of took over. And so people were then sharing things on Instagram. But something that I noticed with CM and really England in general and maybe outside the United States is that WhatsApp seems to be the app of choice. People use this most widely, at least that's the impression I got. And so taking sort of that yes, you can post on Twitter, and please, anyone can post anywhere they want, right? Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want to. But you've also created a WhatsApp group. So that is sort of a temporary group. We're going to keep it open and people can join and information goes out there, but then also people asking questions there, right? And then you shut it down afterwards so that it's not an open thing that anyone can get to. So let's just talk about that for a minute. How did participating in the WhatsApp group, how did that experience help the attendees? What was that like?
I think it really helped the organisation, really, didn't it? I mean, so we used WhatsApp communities. And so we had one group for everybody, but then we had individual groups. So group for the trustees, group for families and parents, groups for AAC users, groups for the conference makers who are volunteers. So you probably notice people in yellow T-shirts as you walk around the university campus. Those people are conference makers and they're volunteers and tend to be students who are doing speech and language therapy degrees or something like that. So they had their own WhatsApp group. As the person who is responsible for the conference programming, so it's my fault if you have to present at 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning after the Monday night dinner, that's down to me. So you have to be nice to me if you want to come and present a conference and put you in a nice slot. It's really handy because obviously there's always going to be a time when somebody can't come or when a time has to change or room has to change. So if there's changes to the programme, it's an easy way to send a message out to everybody to say that session at 9 o'clock on Tuesday is now moved to 2 p.m. or the presenter's ill, they're not going to be there to present. So it was easy for things like that from a personal perspective. I don't know how you found it, Saf.
Yeah, I think it's really good in terms of it's really adaptive. So we have our social media guru who sets up all these chats and things like that. She's constantly adapting it. It's constantly evolving. So at the moment we have a WhatsApp group for planning for next year's conference. But when we were at conference, it was like, if there's a tech problem, that you can send out a message on a channel and it'll be answered. There's somebody monitoring it always somewhere, and I think in terms of AAC users, it's that constant thing of how do they access the material that goes with conference, and that's something we've asked the AAC user group. How do they want their abstracts presented? How do they want things like their timetables presented? And we listen to them, and we've talked about apps in the past, and the feeling has been that the apps may not be necessarily accessible for all AAC users. The majority of platforms that AAC users use would have some kind of accessibility, which means they can use WhatsApp easier than having to then come out of their platform and then go into use computer control or something like that. So so we kind of landed on WhatsApp as being a really good adaptive way of managing the communications.
Saffron, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's always sort of a pain to go into a conference and it's here, download the app. And now you have to get a new app that you don't know how to navigate. And you have to figure that out while you're trying to navigate where you want to go, who you want to talk to. Now you're in a conversation with somebody and it's a whole new thing. But if you can put that information into a platform that people are used to using every day, like WhatsApp, then it just becomes more seamless and people use it more. I mean, I certainly saw that the constant questions coming through, or the not even just questions, just awesome comments. Again, it felt to me, WhatsApp, that portion of it felt like a way of bringing the community even closer together through a virtual means.
Yeah, when we've spoken in the past about using an app, the AAC users have said to us, well, if you're going to use an app, we would need to have prior sight of it, because conference is stressful enough with everything that we're having to deal with and our PAs are having to deal with. And then to add that level of having a whole new bit of technology that we're trying to navigate would be hard to do on the hoof, as it were. So it is something we continually talk about, is having a conference app, but WhatsApp seems to have worked really well this year.
I was a fan.
Even things
Andrea?
like putting links into the WhatsApp group for the conference program. So if anybody, before, if we've said, oh, it's on the website, or you've got a paper program if you want in your bag, but you can just go on WhatsApp and look at your links and touch the link, and there's your conference program or whatever it might be, information you need about where to go for lunch or whatever that might be is there.
Awesome. All right. Well, Andrea, you said, and Saffron, you said too that it's like about a month. We are recording this about a month after Communication Matters 2024. So now we're looking towards 2025. And Andrea, you were like, so I can't give everything away because we're still in development, right? But what can you tell us about Communication Matters 2025? What can we expect?
I think Helen's got something to say about this.
Next year, we are hoping to attract more delegates from abroad and overseas next year, and inevitably this will mean that the conference will grow even more. We are looking at different venues within the university and around the city of Leeds that would have the capacity to meet our needs as a growing conference. We are also looking at moving the main conference dinner to the Armories Hotel, as they have the capacity to cater for up to 1,000 people. I find the prospect of Communication Matters growing and holding our first international conference a new and exciting challenge for us all.
Awesome. That is exciting. Anything else anyone wants to say about 2025?
Just watch this space. It's going to be bigger and better. I think it's really exciting. Post-COVID, we've come back from nothing to being sold out this year, and it's just really exciting to think what can happen next year and how we're going to deal with it. It's looking at the capacity that we have and hopefully growing that capacity so that we can accommodate all comers.
One thing that we're maybe hoping to do, you can cut this out if you need to, Saf, if you're looking at me like you can't say this, is every other year we have started to hold AAC awards. So they are the most amazing events where people can nominate AAC users or environments or services or there's lots of different categories for AAC awards, and we've held an awards dinner every other year for that. And we're hoping next year, Helen talked about the Armouries, and the Armouries is an amazing space in the city of Leeds. Staff can probably tell you a little bit more about the Armouries, but it is an amazing space. And we're hoping to combine the 2025 Communication Matters Conference Monday night dinner with the AAC Awards for 2025 as well. So it will be an even more at the dinner than you saw this year, Chris.
Awesome. I think it's fair to say too, because I think many people in the United States, but maybe around the world, aren't sure exactly where Leeds is until you look at it on a map. And so when you do, Leeds is sort of in the, tell me if I'm wrong, it's sort of centrally located in the country. So I know when my wife and I were planning, okay, well, we're going to the conference, but then we're going to extend this into a vacation of sorts. We had options. It's like, well, do we want to go down to London, or do we want to go over to Cambridge, or we've never been to Scotland? Do we want to go up to Edinburgh or Glasgow? However, my apologies, Scotland, for not pronouncing it correctly. Or do we want to go over to Liverpool or Manchester? Or I know my wife took a day while I was at the conference and went to York. It's very accessible to the rest of the country and other countries nearby. And so it was like, if you wanted to come to the conference, you have options to go all these other places if you were extending your visit. So you've got the awesomeness of the conference, but then usually for us, if we can go someplace, we'd like to extend it and see more. And so if people are like, well, I've been to London. Well, this is not London, right? This is in the center, and you have all the 6 ways to get other places.
Yeah. But Leeds is really well connected in terms of transport. It's on the East Coast main line. So you've got London is 2 hours away. Edinburgh is 2.5 hours away. And then you're east to west. You can get across to Manchester really easily. And then you can go on further and do your Beatles stuff in Liverpool. And in terms of there's an airport in Leeds. There's the international airport in Manchester, which has really good rail links. It's very well connected. And then you have all that. It's in Yorkshire. And I mean, the Yorkshire people, I'm from Yorkshire. The Yorkshire people are really friendly, and there's so much history in a short distance from Leeds. As you said, York is excellent. It's just really well connected road-wise and public transport-wise. You don't need a car because you can get public transport really well and reasonably and very fast as well. The train line's really fast on that side of the country.
Well, we'll have all the information as soon as we have it. We'll make sure it's on the show notes so people can just, where do I find? Of course, they can go to, what's the website?
communicationmatters.org.uk.
Sweet. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. Now, people like to know, or people know that when I do interviews, I like to end with this sort of question, which is, all 4 of us are in, we've been talking about AAC, a conference around AAC. What's got you excited about AAC? What are you curious about recently? What are you questing after? Just what's on your mind about AAC that's got you excited?
So I run a group with a group of other professionals called the AAC Exams Access Group. And we're constantly striving to give AAC users a fair access to external qualifications. We produce guidance to help schools because everyone's so isolated. It's such a spread out field. We produce a guidance document which helps other people who are quite isolated in their schools and colleges to aim for that access for AAC users.
Awesome.
I think it's all about kind of increasing the awareness of AAC and kind of speaking outside of our bubble, really. As you say, everyone on the on this conversation now. We all work in AAC. We all sort of, it's a huge part of all of our lives, and we spend a lot of time thinking about this. And I think that there's so many opportunities to talk outside of our bubble, really, and to promote AAC outside of our bubble. And there's something in the UK called Communication Access UK, and it's free training for organisations or for anyone outside of the AAC world to learn about AAC. And I think that what we talked about earlier in terms of AAC and employment, that's something that I'm really passionate about, because I think, again, AAC users being employed and in a variety of different workplaces and a variety of different settings are going to be something that really do sort of showcase AAC. And I'm also really excited whenever I see something in the media where AAC users are represented accurately, correctly, in a way that kind of resonates with me. I really love that, because I think that this is the big piece of work that needs to be done, really, is to talk to the world about AAC and to make sure the world knows about AAC. And also, I'm really passionate about learning in general. So I think that, we know what we know now, but in 20 years' time, we're going to know something different, right? So just to keep learning and to keep knowing and to keep changing and to recognise that, what we know now is going to change as we move forward. That's the thing that really kind of keeps me excited about staying in the field for AAC.
Andrea, just to comment on one thing there, the open mic night, we mentioned it, but just to be explicit about it, it was at the university bar, not a closed event, right? So anyone who sort of go to the bar, it's sort of, we stumble across this event where it's open mic night. What is this? And suddenly you are expanding people's, oh, wow, I didn't know, right? So that's sort of akin to what you were saying about expanding outside of our bubble. I don't need to tell somebody else about core vocabulary, right? I need the world to know about core, right? That sort of thing. So I agree. That is such an exciting part, is to see how can we spread these tendrils even farther. And then the last thing I want to comment about is, and Helen, I'm very curious if you have anything to add to this, is something that really sort of excited me. And again, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but something that excited me, sitting there listening to I forget when it was, maybe the opening session, or maybe Saffron, it was you talking about, it was like the newbie session. I went to the newbie session, first time communication member session. I forget where I heard it, but somebody said, we're looking in 2025 or maybe beyond, but 2025 to have the largest AAC flash mob ever, like a Guinness Book of World Records sort of thing. And I was like, And then when you said one of the goals, Saffron, is to have more people to come from other countries, I was like, maybe that's something that Talking with Tech podcast could help with, is say, hey, if you're not sure where to go next year, especially if Isaac is not happening, this is the place, right? Come here and let's get that flash mob going, because
definitely.
That on top of everything else we've been talking about is another exciting aspect of it, at least for me. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but it sounds like it might be an awesome goal to have.
And that's all about raising awareness and going out to the world in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be fun and would get a lot of attention. Yeah.
All right, Helen, anything to wrap us up? Any other thoughts?
I think it would be absolutely great if we do manage to organise some sort of flash mob world record attempt around AAC.
Awesome. All right, that's the challenge, everyone. Communication Matters 2025. Flash mob, largest flash mob of AAC users in the world. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.